Electrocast.
Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
On this episode of MTP, we sit down with New England Patriots beat writer for the Boston Globe, Jim McBride, on Cam Newton's release from the Patriots, Mac Jones' ascension to starting quarterback, and team expectations heading into the 2021 NFL season. This is Missing the Point, episode 85. But it's all relative.
Welcome to Missing the Point. I am Michael Marcangelo, joined alongside by Broadway Joe Malkin. And in anticipation of the NFL season kicking off this week, we have a very special guest. He covers the Patriots for the Boston Globe. He's a Malden native that joined the Globe in 1988 as a co-op student from Suffolk University, my alma mater. Please welcome Jim McBride to the show. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. It's a big season, big year for the Patriots. I think that this is probably the most anticipated season of Bill Belichick's career, right? Since 2001.
Yeah, I would think so. You know, it's really a transformative year. You know, the Mac Jones era starting. I think we all knew that Cam was kind of a bridge. Even if he got the job this year as the starting quarterback, it was still kind of be the bridge year to Mac. It just, you know, he accelerated that timetable by having such an outstanding camp. So here we are, you know, with a brand new defense and a new quarterback. So it's going to be a really interesting.
You mentioned, Mac Jones doing such a great job in camp, and with Cam being the bridge quarterback, I at least thought that he had one more year. I thought he was the best chance for the Patriots to have a successful year this year. But I'd be interested to hear, how has the locker room reacted to Cam being cut? Like, what was the initial reaction that went on there?
I think it was, some guys were disappointed, but I think they were all ready to move on, and they were embraced Mac because he showed so much maturity, more so than a lot of rookies do, especially rookie quarterbacks in this league. It's kind of hard to establish yourself. So I think, a lot of the guys really loved Cam and the energy he brought, and he really was a great teammate. Guys enjoyed playing with him, but I think, probably in the recesses of their mind, they saw that Cam hadn't improved too much over what he was last year. And, which a guy that struggled at times with decisions, a guy that struggled to get the ball out quickly. And, with Josh McDaniels' offense, you just can't have that.
Jim, we have read reports and seen things, whether it's social media or through the beat writers, that Mac was picking up the offense extremely quickly, and that Cam was kind of learning from Mac along the way, which I don't necessarily see as a bad thing. But the question is, with the eye test that we all had during camp, is that what we're going to get from Mac Jones? Do you anticipate, and does kind of everyone around you anticipate, that he is going to be what we saw in these 3 preseason games?
I think he's going to be better because throughout camp and throughout, most of the exhibition games, Mac played with the second team. He played behind the second team offensive line. He played that, not with the projected starters in any of the skill positions, except for that one practice against the Giants, 2 weeks ago when Cam was still out because of the COVID protocols. And I think he really turned a lot of heads that day. He showed what he could do playing behind, one of the top offensive lines in the game right now. And, and with some new skill players. So, guys that were going to make this teams, guys like Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, and Jacoby Myers. He wasn't throwing to Gunner and to Isaiah Zuber and some of those guys that, not saying they're not good players, but they weren't projected to be starters. So now Mac has that full arsenal at his disposal, and I think he's even going to be better than what he showed.
I guess, what would you say to fans, that are already concerned about the fact that Mac is banged up? He's wearing a brace, and is he built for the longevity of an NFL season, especially the longest NFL regular season to date?
Well, I think he benefits from two things. And I just to address the knee brace, when we first noticed that in Philadelphia at the first joint practice, and he really downplayed it, said he wasn't, this wasn't a reaction to an injury. It was more of a protection thing. That's his lead leg. We've all seen quarterbacks get fallen into by offensive linemen or defensive linemen, or offensive linemen that are falling backwards, like Tom a few years back, like Carson Palmer. So it was more of a protection thing. It's the same type of brace that the Patriots really require their offensive linemen to wear on both legs to prevent guys from falling back and kind of, collapsing the knee. So I don't think it was a reaction to an injury. I think it was more of a preventative measure. But two things I think that will help Mac, in the long haul is the fact that he's got a good offensive line. And he also gets rid of the ball really quickly. The obvious comparisons to Tom were there, and I'm not going to compare a rookie to Tom Brady at any point, but he does have similar qualities in that he processes information really quickly and he gets rid of the ball. Now whether he's going to be able to do that, with the game on the line, the way Tom has time in and time out through his career, that's the thing that remains to be seen. But certainly he has the physical and the mental skills to do it. Can he do it in the emotional times? That's really the big question we have.
Jim, that's the first time we've ever had Carson Palmer mentioned on our podcast in 13 months. I wanted to point that one out. That's a good drop. But you mentioned it twice now, but just how good is this offensive line?
Yeah, I think they were pretty damn good last year, and I think they're even better this year. There's some guys in different spots. Obviously they lost Joe Tooney, who, the preeminent guard on the free agent market. And, somebody was going to pay a bag of money for him. And it wasn't going to be the Patriots. And I don't blame the Chiefs for doing it because they've got some pretty valuable assets to protect. But, I think Isaiah Wynn heading into his fourth season is a damn good left tackle. Trent Brown, his one season here, obviously he played left tackle back then, but he's been nothing but phenomenal this whole camp. And he really loves playing it. You haven't seen any of the kind of the residual of the last 2 years when he was in Oakland and Las Vegas. Even Andrews is about as smart as they come at calling protections and, being in the right place at the right time. He's not a guy that's unbelievably overpowering, but he's very fundamentally sound. And then Michael Wendell, who's taking Tooney's spot, really good player. And Shaq Mason certainly has a track record. So this is in the upper echelon of offensive line. It's not only in the AFC, but across the board in the NFL.
Yeah, I feel like you know what you're going to get from Trent Brown, and you know what you're going to get from Shaq Mason. Isaiah Wynn had a tough first quarter against Chase Young. Now, granted, I feel like every left tackle in the league is going to have a tough game against Chase Young. But did that expose anything in Isaiah Wynn's arsenal as a left tackle?
Yeah, maybe he's a little slow in the back pedal, but I think that was just, as you mentioned, that was Chase Young. He's kind of a different breed. So he's a guy that's going to get a lot of people on their heels. But I think when Isaiah makes the proper adjustments, he's pretty much in position all around. I mean, he might be a little small for a tackle height-wise, but, again, with Mac, he's going to be a guy that gets the ball out quickly. So maybe you don't need to protect him as much as you did Cam last year, who, had trouble, reading through his progressions and finding the second guy or the third guy. So I don't think that's going to be a problem with Mac. Now, if he ends up getting sacked a bunch of times, I'll have egg on my face. But right now, that's not how I see it.
A lot. And just a follow-up, you mentioned the progression. It was nice. And Mike and I we're both in the different camps here in the preseason. He was the Cam guy. I was the Mac guy. And just watching both of them go through the progressions. And a lot of times you saw them go to that outlet or, the dump down to the back. And a lot of people criticized both of them for that, even though that was something that was very prevalent in the Tom Brady, Josh McDaniels offense. Is that progression for Mac going to the dump off? Is that an issue, or is that him reading through and finding that as his best option?
I think it's the latter. It's, you look at a guy like James White, probably, one of the better pass catching backs in the league. And he was kind of a non-factor for a lot of times last year because Cam just could never get to that level of, my 1 and 2 is not open. I'm going to check down and go to James. By that time, he was running because the pocket was starting to collapse and he just hadn't read the situation quickly enough. I think a big year for James White because, screen passes and checkdowns are a huge part of Josh's offense, and Mac can clearly make those reads. I think back to his first possession of the second half in the Washington game where he ran the 2-minute offense to near perfection. That told me a lot. I mean, that was a guy that was, he was running with the twos at the time and he just stormed down the field. And it was funny to see them go, open up with the 2-minute offense. But, and Coach Belichick explained that they really wanted to run that at the end of the first half, but they didn't get a chance. So they figured, hey, it's exhibition season. We'll just run it at the start of the second half. So, I think that's a huge part of the game. And they've got a lot of good backs that can catch the ball. Ramondre Stevenson came out huge way during the summer catching the ball. Didn't really do that much of that at Oklahoma. James White, as I mentioned. And, I love this kid, J.J. Taylor. I loved him last year, and I like him even better this year. He's so quick. He made an impact last year, and he didn't even have a real training camp or a spring program, and now he does. So I think they're really going to spread the ball around. And that's why a lot of us thought Mac were getting this job because this team was kind of built to be smash mouth with a good stable of running backs. I think when I first saw Sony getting traded, I thought, that might be the first sign that Mac's the guy.
Didn't even make that connection. That's a good point.
Why was that? Why were those two correlated for you?
Because, you need depth at running back if you're going to play smash mouth. If you're going to run the ball all the time to 3 yards in a cloud of dust, those running backs take a beat. So you need a guy that, like Sony Michel, the committed spell Damian Harris. So you need James White to come in. So for them to get rid of their, maybe their 1A tailback, told me that they were going to pass the ball off this year. It wasn't just going to be, a couple of handoffs and then, trying to scramble on third down to move the sticks.
Speaking of passing, that offense last year was abysmal. And I guess a lot of it was Cam and taking too long, learning a new system, didn't have a full off season. I guess my question, I do have two questions for you, but I want to look back first. How much of, I guess, the atrocity that was the passing offense last year was based off of Cam's inability to read, or was it based off of the wide receivers' inability to get separation?
Yeah, it's probably 50-50 or maybe 60-40 with Cam not making the reads. And he just, after Julian got hurt in the Seattle game, he really didn't have a 1A receiver all year and no tight ends. I mean, they really haven't had production from the tight end spot since Gronk caught that touchdown to set up the Super Bowl win against the Rams. I mean, that's the last time I can remember the Patriots having an impact catch from the tight end position. That won't be an issue this year. They've got, two of the better tight ends in the league, and Devin Asiasi is going to be better this year. So that's pretty deep role there. So I just think it was, was Cam not getting through the progressions, but there was a lack of weapons on the outside for him to, Damiere Byrd was pretty much their best receiver last year, and he didn't even get invited back this year. So that should tell you a lot.
It does. So which leads me to my next question. Is the offense that we see this year, are we as fans getting overhyped just because of how bad it was last year, or do they have a real chance to be a top 10 passing offense?
Yeah, I don't know about top 10. I think a lot depends on N'Keal, if he can come back and finally, kind of build on the summer he was having before he got hurt. Because he really was having a nice summer. But it's tough because he's a first rounder, so there's these high expectations on him. But maybe he's not built to be a number one. But if he's a number 4 and he's the best number 4 in the league, I think they'd take that at this point. If you've got Aguilar, Bourne, Jacoby Myers as your top 3, and then, N'Keal comes in as your 4th receiver, that's not a bad lineup. It really isn't. Yeah.
We've talked about what the offensive line is going to be, what we think Mac is going to be. Something that you broke. You broke the story about Cam Newton being released by the New England Patriots. So I guess one, as someone that's a beat writer, a journalist, what is that like, number one, from your experience? And 2, how did you find out and what was your reaction?
Well, I heard from a source and, it's always a good feeling to get, it's kind of unbelievable to be honest with you, because I was certainly thinking that Cam was going to get the job and that he was going to be the starting quarterback. So it was kind of a surprise, and, had to do some double checking and, then got to break the story. And, I'm not going to lie, when you beat Adam Schefter and, Ian Rappaport and those guys to a story and they're chasing you, pretty good feeling.
But that's a great feeling. So you mentioned having to do the homework, and this is, do the checkups and make sure that what you're breaking is real, because that's huge news. It's not like saying, I feel like obviously this was bigger news than Sony Michel being traded to Los Angeles. But what kind of process goes into that for you, checking the sources and making sure everything's correct?
Yeah, you just have to, you have to make sure the source is a trusted source, first of all, where it's coming from, and if it's a person that's been reliable in the past, and then the process really, it used to be when I started at the Globe, you start writing the story right away. Now you have to get the tweet prepared with a link, so that when you finally tweet it out, it's going to get a reaction, but you want to drive people to the Globe website to make sure that they're going there. So it's writing this really quick story, getting it up online. And then there's a lot of panic because you don't know how long you're going to have the story by yourself. The person that told you might be telling someone else in 5 minutes. And if they're quicker on the draw than you are, then you're probably asking them to be on your podcast and not me.
No, you were on the list already, Jim. So, no worries about that. We know, yeah, no, it's really interesting to see Twitter and watch those things happen and see how quickly they get fired off. So you have a very quick trigger finger. So we like that. Craig was the first one. He read it and said, okay, well, number one, Cam's gone. Number two, I'm emailing Jim.
It was a busy day. I don't know.
I can imagine.
But it was, the email box filled up pretty quickly that day.
That's why I waited a couple of days.
Craig's like, yep. Jim had emails. It was Schefter, D'Alessandro, and Rappaport, all 1, 2, 3.
I guess that brings me to like my next question, because you mentioned that you've been in the Globe a long time. How does breaking stories now compare to how it did 15, 20 years ago? Like, what role has social media played, and is it making it better for you? I know it's probably making it harder, but what is the impact of that?
Yeah, it's been huge. I mean, I think back when I first started as a co-op student at the Globe in 1988, we didn't know what other papers had. Like, after first edition, like 10:30 or so, we would send a truck over to the Herald to get first edition Heralds, and we'd give them a bundle of Globes and we'd get a bundle of Heralds. And that's how you found out what they had. And then you had to react to it. Now, everyone knows you're breaking news in 15 seconds. As soon as you're out there, there's people that, I don't know how they do it, but I'll send off a tweet on a breaking news thing like that. And, in less than 20 seconds, I'll already have like 25 retweets on it. And I don't know if there's a program that automatic retweets something, like maybe, but
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it's been huge because now you have a chance to chase the story. Whereas before it was so reactionary, you might not get it in the paper the next day because you didn't find out till midnight. Now, you find out 15 seconds after another reporter has it, and you have to go about try to confirm it for yourself.
So having done both, would you say that you preferred now as opposed to back in 88?
Yeah, I like now. I do. I was slow to the internet age. I grew up delivering the paper, working for the paper, and, the paper's still the money driver. Even though the internet, there's more readers, there's less money there, advertising dollars, which is what pays our salaries. So, subscriptions go a long way, but advertising dollars is still what pays, most reporters' salaries. So, the faster you can get something up, the more people are going to drive to your site or read your paper on the next day. So, yeah, I like
a big part of the story that you broke about Cam being released. Was his vaccination status part of the reason he was gone? And Coach Belichick has come out and he's made a statement that he's kind of walked it back a little bit. I guess my question is, someone who covers the league and the Patriots, do you think a player's vaccination status actually plays a part in whether they'll be released or get signed to another team?
Yeah, you'll never get, outside of Urban Meyer, you'll never get a coach to admit that. certainly it's got to be in the back of your mind. I mean, you take all this information you have, all these practices you've been at, a guy's mental makeup, like, how a guy reacts in certain situations, all of that goes into the decision. So to say that, or to think that somebody's vaccination status doesn't play a role, I think would be naive. Because obviously with all these breakthrough cases, anyone can become unavailable in a heartbeat. But if you're not vaccinated, there's a greater chance that you can become unavailable. And if you're, a game plan guy, like, the Patriots are such a game plan offense. If you're planning your whole, opening week against the Miami Dolphins with Cam being your quarterback, and then you wake up Saturday morning and find out he's not your quarterback because of a COVID protocol, that hurts. That really, we saw that last year with Kansas City, and when the Patriots, what was that, week 2? So, I think that you want to minimize the risk. Now, if it's the difference between, Tom Brady being unvaccinated and Brian Hoyer being vaccinated, well, Tom Brady's going to get the benefit of the doubt. But these guys were, there was such a close competition in camp, and, clearly Mac's vaccinated because he hasn't worn the mask. You don't see him wearing the mask, and, it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. They're never going to admit that, and no team should. But if you've got a 1 and a 1A, you go with the guy that's vaccinated.
Yeah, it helped that Mac clearly outplayed Cam down the stretch in overall. I mean, that, you're right. It should be a part of it. In the Urban Meyer, they came out the next day and had a report about that and said it wasn't true. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, pal. Yeah, you're having a great time down there.
He was applauded by a lot of people for being that honest.
Oh, sure.
Knew he was going to get in hot water for it. I mean, the Players Association was not going to stand for letting him do that. But he was probably telling the truth. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah, and I mean, he probably could have gotten away with that at Ohio State, Utah, or Florida, but it's not going to fly in Jacksonville.
Right. Or anywhere in the NFL.
Sure, absolutely.
He's the king of the kingdom when he was in Gainesville, or
Oh, yeah.
But, there's other warlords over him.
To his chagrin, I'm sure.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about the offensive side of the ball. I think the biggest question mark for me is I believe that this defense could be a top 10 NFL defense. But how much of that is predicated on the fact that Stephon Gilmore comes back and comes back wanting to play for the Patriots?
Yeah. I think this defense has a chance to be elite, with Stephon obviously better than they are now. I did hear Coach Belichick's comments this morning. We didn't talk to him. We talked to him yesterday, and we'll talk to him again tomorrow. But he was on the radio today, and he said that him and Steph are on the same page, which, I take him at his word. He's not going to, upset the apple cart. I think that they put a lot of money into this defense, especially the front seven. I don't think they're not going to not pay their best defensive player when he's ready to play. But there was no sense, if he's still rehabbing that torn quad, there's no sense giving him a bag of money until he can prove he can play. So this 6 weeks buys them another 6 weeks to get him into shape and to work out, whatever kind of deal they're going to work out. Maybe nothing. Maybe he ends up playing 7 or 8 games this year for the full salary, because when you're on PUP, you still get your salary. So it'll be interesting. But I do think that this defense, particularly the front seven, the way they've redesigned it, is going to be really good. They're going to be able to rush the passer. They're going to be able to stop the run way better than they did last year, which was a point of contention for really anyone that watches Patriots football, to see them not be able to stop the run on a consistent basis. They didn't like it either, and that's why they went and spent all that money.
Is there a chance they go out and try and deal Stephon Gilmore?
I suppose there's a chance, but, I think it would have to really fill a need for them too. Maybe there's an injury somewhere else over these first, 2 months, and they need a guy, and there's another team that matches up well with them that needs a cornerback. And really every team in the league is going to need a cornerback like Steph Gilmore. He's really, really elite. But, I would never say never, but I think their goal is to get him, especially, the Patriots are, 6-2, 7-1 after the first 2 months. They're going to want Steph back to kind of keep that train rolling. Now, if they fall flat on their face early on, then I would see more of a chance for him to get traded. But teams aren't going to pay a lot for a guy who's only under contract for 8 games.
Sure.
Is week 4 the biggest regular season game in your time with New England?
I think it's the biggest regular season game in my lifetime.
Okay.
In any sport, maybe game 4 of the Red Sox World Series in 2004. That was a pretty big game, but I think this will be the most demanded ticket in the history of New England sports. People want to go and see this game. People want to go see Tom. I think they'll cheer him when he comes out, but once the game starts, I think he'll be treated like an opposing quarterback.
As he should be.
So we asked Karen Garigi this question. I think we even asked Dan Shaughnessy this question. What are the odds that when he does come back, Bob Kraft in the Patriots organization does something to commemorate his time here in New England?
Yeah, I think there'd be like a video tribute or something like that. Because it would be glaring. I've seen them do it for guys that of lesser stature have come back and they've paid tribute to them. They're not going to stop the game or any of that kind of stuff. But, clearly, at some point there's going to be a video message or, just a package of his highlight plays or, hell, even run a couple of Super Bowl plays on the scoreboard. But yeah, I think they'll pay tribute to him. Sure. I mean, he's the greatest quarterback in the history of the game, probably the greatest player in the history of the game.
No argument for me.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing to argue with there. It's like, yep, Jim's right. Like, let's leave it there. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll be at that game, and I was one of the people that was fortunate to be at Super Bowl 36. Probably the first time I saw my dad cry at the age of 13. I'm sure we all have at some point over the Patriots. But having him back in week 4, you mentioned cheering him on and then treating him as another regular quarterback. What do you think and this is just kind of a fan perspective as somebody who's followed this team, and what do you think the number of Patriots fans wearing number 12 pewter jerseys is going to be?
Well, I would think that most Patriot fans are not selling their tickets to this game unless they want to pay for their kids' college education.
True.
I'm just saying. I think there'll be a lot of Tom Brady Patriot jerseys in the crowd. I really do. Obviously, enemy jerseys are always part of the fabric of the game. But if you're a Patriots fan, you're wearing your Patriot shirt to that game. But if it's a Tom Brady shirt, so be it. I'm not sure a lot of Patriots fans who went out and bought that pewter merchandise, and I know there was a lot of them. I don't think that's the game they're going to wear it to.
We can only hope.
Joe's been really wondering about that too, because he's like, if I see too many of those jerseys, I'm just going to throw up.
I was listening to a radio station on the way down to the first day of camp, and they had this report that there were a ton of Buccaneers jerseys in the stands at camp on day 1. So I walked through. I saw 2.
Well, if that's a bunch,
that was like an intern seeing the first guy in line have a Brady Buccaneers jersey on it and called in and said, "Hey, they're all over the place." So
those guys didn't take math courses in Suffolk. That's why they thought it was
right. What's so Jim, what's a realistic win total for the Patriots this season? Let's say all is fair, everyone stays healthy. What do you think is a realistic outcome of the season for the Patriots?
I think 11-6. They've got 17 games this year. They got to take their lumps at some point. Injuries happen, so that they're going to win a game that people didn't think they were going to win. They're going to lose a game that people didn't think they were going to lose. But this team won 7 games last year with Cam as their quarterback, and with all these changes and all these additions, I don't think a 4-win differential is that much to ask or that big of a high wire act to predict. So 11-6. That's what I'm sticking with for the paper. So, you guys are hearing it here first.
This is the breaking news by Jim McBride on Missing the Point. Jim, 5 days away from the first game of the season. So, we've backed it up on you now. We've gone from week 4 to the end of the season, now back to week 1. What do you think about week 1, the matchup with the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback? You have, Brian Flores, the head coach down there. It's a 4:25 game in New England in September. What are you thinking this week 1?
I literally like the Patriots. I think, Tua is still young. And Bill usually, devours young quarterbacks. Tua did beat the Patriots last year, but that was a depleted Patriots team. That was a Patriots team that the front seven was terrible. So I think, they're going to be much better. And I think that he's going to throw some things at Tua that he didn't see before. Hopefully Brian Flores doesn't, remember every single trick that Bill taught him. But I do think the Dolphins are going to be good. But I think that this week with a full stadium at Gillette, 425, and the way that this defense has performed, not so much in the exhibition games, which was fine, but there's really no scheming. What we've seen in practice, they're going to generate a pass rush that we haven't seen in a couple of years. They've got some guys, Chase Winovich is probably your fourth or fifth best linebacker on this team. That's pretty good. Matthew Judon, if you haven't watched him,
insane.
This guy's special. He's going to be really good. He's going to be a really fun guy to watch. There's going to be a lot of number 9 jerseys by week 2 in Patriot form.
I have to ask, because I love him and I love everything about him. Am I wrong to compare him to Adalius Thomas?
For his Ravens career or his Patriots career?
For his Ravens career, and then the Patriots signing him because of it.
Yeah, I think that, probably a little bit of different players. Adalius was quite an athlete too, but in speaking to Matt, he's really motivated and hungry. He wants to prove this deal. And I never got that feeling from Adalius Thomas, even though he was a wonderful player in Baltimore, but he never really bought into the New England system. I don't know if how old you guys are, but I don't know if you remember he was one of the guys that was late to practice one day because he got caught in the snow.
Oh yeah. Bill sent him home, right?
Yeah. And he, instead of, giving him mea culpa and saying, geez, I got to straighten up, he took the exact opposite attitude. He's like, I'm an adult. I shouldn't be treated like that. Well, adults show up on time. And that really soured his entire career in New England. So I don't think Matt's that kind of guy. So, I know they came from the same team, but.
So what made me think about it, Jim, and I bring this up again always because I just want to be talked off at this ledge, right? One of his playmaking abilities in Baltimore all seemed that they came off of plays that he made that maybe weren't drawn up. And we know the Belichick system is if everyone does what they're told, it will happen. So I guess I was just a little concerned. You've talked me out of it. Karen talked me out of it, that he will be able to do what Bill tells him to do to allow the defense to thrive.
Yeah, I don't think he's a freelancer. I really don't. I think he's a system guy. I think we had some of that problems with Chase Winovich the last couple of years. He liked to freelance a little bit, and you saw his snaps decrease. And, he was injured for a good part of this camp, but he ended up playing in the Eagles game. He came back that week. And I don't know if you guys saw his post-game availability with the media, but he was very emotional that day. And he made a point of saying that he had bought into the system. And whatever they needed, he was going to do it. His voice was almost cracking. So I think he learned, you don't freelance in this defense. Bill Belichick is always going to put you in a position to win. You're not going to win every game, but you're going to have a chance to, if you pay attention to the game plan that him and his staff have, meted out. And if you don't, you're not going to play.
We're really glad, Jim, that you could talk Mike off of that ledge, because that is literally anytime we talk about Matthew Judon, anytime he comes up, Mike, it's funny, Mike loves Matt Judon. Yeah. He's not so fond of Adalius Thomas, so he's like, I just don't want this guy to be this guy. And we get that too personally. So, Mike's just very concerned, and he's a concerned Patriots fan. That's how he would sign his letter to D. Rabby.
Correct.
Read my theory in today's Globe, and that might ease your mind a little bit too.
Will do.
So, Jim, my last question, because I always like to ask about kickers, because I love kickers. Quinn Nordine, is he the starting kicker? Because I haven't seen that Nick Folk has been released. Not that I like Nick Folk, but I love what the rookie out of Michigan has done in this preseason. Is Quinn Nordine the guy, and does he have what it takes to be good enough to make those kicks in the back end of games?
Yeah, my best answer is probably we'll see. It's funny, I think Nick was a little banged up in camp. He definitely was. And I think that, he wasn't able to really kind of go 100%. And Quinn, to his credit, took advantage of that. And he showed off a big leg. He had the hiccups against the Eagles games, but for the most part, in practices and games, he's been fine. Now, how he's going to react to a huge stadium, an NFL game, that's a different story. And the fact that they signed Nick to the practice squad makes me feel like Quinn's probably going to have a pretty short leash. So, it's kind of an insurance policy. They could have done it the other way around. They could have kept Nick and tried to sign Quinn to the practice squad. But I think the fact that kickers are so hard to come by, that if they exposed Quinn, if they had cut him, he was going to get snapped up by someone, probably right onto a 53-man roster. So, and that wasn't going to happen with Nick. So this was the most logical way to handle that situation. We've got an insurance policy and Nick, but let's give the kid a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to, I've always liked new blood. I thought it was almost criminal when Bill did this, what you just said, kept the veteran kicker a few years ago and put Younghoe Koo on the practice squad. And then Younghoe got picked up by Atlanta. I thought that, criminal's kind of harsh, but that he was a guy that's turned out to be a great kicker in Atlanta.
Yeah. But he had a couple of rough spots before he ever got to New England.
That's true.
So, young kickers are tough. We all remember, Rohrwasser last year. That was almost a disaster from the first practice. So,
and Bill doesn't really trust young kickers in clutch situations. He elected to not have Gostkowski kick a field goal in the 2007 Super Bowl against the Giants because he thought he did not want to ruin his kicker that early. My last question for you, and I promised, I lie, but I'm promising right now. My last question for you said 11-6 for the Patriots. Is that enough to make the playoffs? And if it isn't, is there pressure on Belichick to be replaced?
Yes, I think it's enough to make the playoffs. No, I think Bill has built up enough will where, he goes on in his own terms, with New England. Personally, I think they win the division. I think the Bills slip a little. I know everyone's on the Bills wagon, but, we've all heard of that sophomore slump. And I think that, and not that Josh Allen is in the second year, but that year after a team kind of breaks through, that second year, that sophomore year, they take some lumps. They're going to be good for the long haul, but I think the Patriots have a chance to sneak in and possibly win this division and maybe make Josh Allen look like, the Josh Allen from 2019, not the guy that just tore up the league last year.
With nobody in the stands.
Right. Yeah.
I love that. So, Jim, tell our listeners where they can find you if they ever want to read anything about you.
So you can follow me on Twitter at Globe Jim McBride. I will never clog your timeline with silly stuff. It's only Patriots news or NFL news. So, you'll never see a picture of what I'll eat for dinner that day.
I mean, you may have just lost a follower in me because that's really what I follow for. But Jim McBride, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. It was great. It was great to finally connect with you. And so for Joe Malkin, Craig D'Alessandro, I am Michael Marcangelo saying thank you so much for listening to Missing the Point.
If you're a working professional wondering what's next for your career, you've come to the right place. Whether you're looking for a promotion, growth, or a potential career transition, look no further. With over 30 years working in a variety of industries, I share my insider knowledge with those ready to get ahead on Career Advancement with Craig Ansell. Tune in to get your strategies for success.
Miles, are you ready to record our promo for Season 2 of the Wanna Bet podcast?
David, have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Miles, we're not here to quote lines from Airplane. We're here to tell people that Season 2 starts August 18th.
But I like Airplane.
I know you do, but Wanna Bet is a sports betting podcast. Each week we bet $1,000 on the NFL teams and games that we love.
Well, that sounds like fun.
It is fun. And last year you picked over 60% of your games correctly.
How'd you do?
We're not talking about that. We are telling people that they can find us every Friday. So no more movie quotes.
Roger.
Electricast.